got the 86 back in the shop. Well, it's been in the shop, but back in the, it's gonna get worked on with a, which one of these do I use? Yeah, so we're gonna dive back into this thing. If you follow along with this original build, you know this is my nostalgia build. I built this car to be just nostalgic, old school, vintage, give you those feels, those vibes. That is the whole point of this car. And we got it running, we got it driving, it's on the road, but it's just got some issues that are preventing us from really actually enjoying it. Like some things that absolutely need to be fixed before you drive a car on the road, which is why we haven't been driving it, and just to complete off the build. Now, there's a longer list of things to do to this thing, pulling the engine out, painting the bay, all that stuff. But right now, we're just gonna focus on finishing it the way I intended originally, and we're gonna try to get everything done. It's a tall order, but I think we can make it happen. If it was a long video, then we probably did get it done. So let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, guys, before we get too deep into today's video, I wanted to talk to you about today's video sponsor, Factor. So I've been using Factor for quite a while now, and it has legitimately been life-changing. It almost feels like a cheat code to be able to get more work done and still eat well, cut out, take out, all of those things. So Factor is a meal service that delivers fresh, never frozen meals right to your door that are ready in 2 minutes. I mean, it's about as fast as you can do anything in this life. 2 minutes and your food is ready to go. And that is huge for me because I've tried to eat even just a little bit healthier or cut out takeout because it's expensive and it's not very good for you. And I failed over and over again because I'm never willing to sacrifice, when it boils right down to it, the time out here in the shop, getting stuff done, working on projects, doing what I love, to go put that time into eating better. I can't do it. But with Factor, I get to do both. I get to work out here in the shop as long as I want, and then I can go inside and make a fresh, delicious meal in 2 minutes. And everything they have like 34 different meal options. Everything I've had, I've tried pretty much everything at this point, has been delicious. I've loved all of it. They have a good variety of options. They've got calorie smart options for the people looking for that kind of stuff. Like, it's just incredible. I can't say enough good things about it. I actually met a guy, a viewer at Grid Life, and he started trying it after seeing it on the videos and had been using it for about a month and said he was in love with it. Pretty much all the same things I've been saying. It's really solid. It's a really great option for people who don't necessarily have the time, have other things going on, but still want to eat well and don't want to waste a bunch of money on takeout. So if you're interested in trying it out for yourself, head to factor75.com or click the link down in the description and use code TaylorJust50 to get 50% off your first box. It's a really good deal, really good way to kind of dip your toes in the water, try it out, and just see what you think. Don't take my word for it. Try it. Give it a shot. I'm telling you, it's sick. It's great. So anyway, talking about not having a lot of time, we don't. So I need to get back to work. So the first thing we're going to dive into is ditching our bike carb setup here. So this is a neat setup and I don't mind it. The car rips on it. It runs good. It revs out. It doesn't, the startup and idle, the cold start especially, is not great. You're kind of always tinkering with the idle, but that's part of the charm. That's part of what I wanted when I decided to do carbs on this thing, was the charm of a vintage old school car. But that being said, these were never my intention when I set out to build this car. What I wanted from the start was a pair of side draft Weber carburetors. I just wanted something old school with side draft Webers on it. So we did get these, we got them on, we got it running with them. It started up and idle great, but wide open throttle, if you tried to get on it at all, it would just fall on its face every time. So we set them to the side, we put the bike carbs on it just to make sure everything was good with the cams and the springs and all the other stuff we did, and we shelved them. But now it's time to get these working. So ordered in from Pegasus Auto Racing a pair of rebuild kits, got everything we need to clean these up and ideally enjoy this thing the way we intended from the start. So that's where we're gonna start today. Before we dive into any of the other upgrades we have planned, I wanna get this thing running right on Webers. So that being said, we got some work to do. We're gonna split these apart, clean them, rebuild them, and get this setup back on the car. So I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering and we're gonna get into it. So I set myself up a nice paper towel workstation. This is pretty much mandatory as a car guy if you're taking anything apart. It's good to keep dirt and grime and stuff from getting in there, but it also just feels like what you're supposed to do. I can't take anything apart without having some paper towels down, even if it's a clean table. It's silly, but hey. So we go ahead and get the Webers off of the adapter manifold. So this is a nice cast adapter manifold. And fortunately, it wasn't too hard to get to the bolts that hold them to it. it. So with them off, we can start stripping them down. So we need to pull the tops off. This is what holds the fuel float, and as you can see, it gives us access to the internals, all of the jetting and the emulsion tubes and all of that good stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and get the top off the second one, and then I decided to go ahead and soak these in parts washer solvent overnight. There's a lot of built up carbon buildup and grime, and there's just all sorts of stuff on these, both inside and out. So I wanted to start there. Just soak them and then just wire brush them, soak them, wire brush them, soak them. Just try to get a lot of that grime and buildup off before we get into the intricate details, so we don't have any of that stuff transfer into some of these small passageways. You know, some of the tips of these jets and these needle seats are so precise that if you had even just a piece of dirt in there, it would definitely hinder its ability to work correctly. So once we had them roughly clean, the body's clean and the inside's pretty well cleaned out, we went ahead and started stripping one down, stripping all of the jets out, the emulsion tubes, the mixture screws, pretty much anything that can come off is coming off. And we're gonna get all the way in here and try to clean these things as thoroughly as possible, because again, one little piece of something stuck down in one of these chambers could be the difference between this engine running really well and it running really, really poorly. So we brake cleaned out all the chambers, all the needles, all the seats, and got everything as clean as we possibly could. Hopefully it's clean enough. All right, so we've got this one semi taken apart. We're leaving it together until we get this one finished up, because I stripped it all the way down. So we took everything out, we blasted air and brake cleaner through all the ports, and everything seems to be flowing. This one was a little bit clogged up, so that could have been part of our problem. You can see some of the old parts mixed with some of the new parts. The rebuild kit doesn't have everything, but it has a good amount of stuff. These are our emulsion tubes. We're going to keep the same jetting for now. I just want to do a full refresh on this thing, get it all clean, know that we don't have anything clogged, and then see where we're at, see if we need to start changing jetting or replacing other parts. But I'm hoping just a good, thorough, clean job will get these things working right. I mean, they were close. The car started up, cold started great, it idled great. You know, it putted around all right. It's just if you tried to get on it all, it'd fall on its face. So yeah, that being said, I want to go ahead and get this one put back together, all sorted out, and then we'll do the same thing to this one. So it would definitely be ideal to have got some more replacement parts, some new emulsion tubes, some new jets, and some things like that. But we don't really know where we're at, and we're not going to really know where we're at until we know that we have a clean, fully functioning carburetor. If it's clogged up and we think it's lean and we go bigger on jets, it's not going to do us any good. So this is step one. Just put it back together exactly the way we got it, all cleaned up, and then see where we're at. So luckily, some of the more important stuff we get replacements of, like the fuel stop for the floats and things like that. So hopefully this will do the trick. I'm really hoping, but we got to be careful when we put this thing back together, make sure everything goes back in the right places. Luckily, it's kind of hard to mix it up. There's not a lot of things that you could cross and put something in the wrong place. So it's really kind of foolproof, but there are a lot of little pieces in here and they all need to be accounted for. So while I'm working on that, Josue started working on getting the bike carb setup back off. Now, both of these setups have their own challenges when it comes to pulling them off and putting them on. The flanges, you know, it's on one, some of the top bolts are hard to get to. On the other, the bottom bolts. And we actually have a specific set of hardware that we've put together out of my hardware bin for each set, because they both kind of require different length bolts, different type of bolts to get to them more easily. It's a little bit tricky, but Josue goes ahead and gets the bike carbs off and then tosses the Weber manifold back on. Normally we put the Webers on with the manifold, but it's going to be a lot easier to get the manifold on without the Webers on it, so we might as well split the process up this time. All right, our carbs are officially rebuilt. All the jets and ports and needle valves and seats, all cleaned out, all new gaskets. If they don't work now, then obviously we've got a jetting problem. So, really happy to have that done. So we got the manifold adapter bolted back on. We had to do some trimming for these injector block-offs. The injectors go straight into the cylinder head on this engine as opposed to into the intake. So when you swap the carbs, you've got basically a bunch of injector holes that you got to plug off. It took me forever to get these caps, but we got them, and we never ran the Webers with the caps. So anyway, that's on. I need to put the Webers back onto it. We got the throttle cable pulled out, the aftermarket one. We need to put the stock one back in. And right now we're working on the distributor cap. So we've got a leaky O-ring, a distributor O-ring that needs to get fixed, but where the header is, it is melting the distributor cap, as you can see. And I had a hard time finding the right one, but I did manage to find the right one. So we're replacing the cap and the rotor button, and we're gonna heat shield it with some Mishimoto heat shielding to prevent this from happening again. you can literally see on the header the remnants of the plastic melting. So he's gonna work on getting that swapped out, getting the throttle cable in. I'm going to work on putting the levers back on and getting that all hooked up. So we got the distributor cap nicely heat wrapped. He does a really good job with that stuff. That's why I had him do it. And I started working on putting the Webers themselves back on. Now, where you gain a little, you give a little. So we gained a little by putting the manifold on by itself. It was a lot easier to get to all the hardware and hold it in position and all of those things. But where we lost a little, where we gave a little, was putting the Webers themselves back on. So these kind of hook together with this linkage because you're basically driving both of them even though they're two individual carbs. So trying to get that all lined up together and fitted together and get them bolted on and keep the gaskets in place, it was a bit of a struggle, a bit of a juggling act, but we managed to get it done. And now we just need to hook up the fuel lines because they're different and the Webers are back in business. All right, Webers are officially reinstalled. I'm pretty happy with the fact that now they look right. Before they just looked so crusty on there. Now they look pretty good. I mean, obviously it'd be nice if they were brand new looking, but that wouldn't really fit with the build anyway. So yeah, we've got the fuel lines hooked back up. They're back on. Everything's set. Throttle cable is back in. Distributor cap changed with double heat shield situation. So we're pretty well ready to try to fire this thing up. We got to prime the fuel system, you know, get the bowls filled, make sure we got no leaks, and then try to fire this thing up. If it fires up easy, then we'll let it warm up and hopefully it'll actually drive well this time. Last time it would just, as soon as you tried to give it any bit of gas, you know, first gear, second gear, it didn't matter, it would just fall on its face. So there's, we should know pretty quickly if it's better or not any better. So yeah, I guess let's, it's a moment of truth, let's do it. All right, Josue.
Primer up.
Primer up, let's roll.
Falling right on its face. See any fuel yet? Okay. We got fuel now.
Going to full throttle now.
It's better. First to nominate.
I don't know if it's a fuel pump issue. All right, moment of truth. Before, I feel like I could free rev it sometimes and it would free rev, but I could be wrong. Oh no, that seems like it's working.
We beat the camera. Trying to rev it normally or stabbing it?
I'm trying to like find a spot in the throttle where it works. Why do the Webers hate me? Because it's like, it rips so good with the other carbs, but it doesn't start up and idle to save its life until it gets warmed up. With these, it cold starts great, but it doesn't run to save its life. Get some out of hoods. That sucks. All that work to rebuild these and put them back on just for it to...
Well, now they're fresh, so hopefully we can turn some screws or change a jet, anything. Anyone.
All right, we opened up our air correction jets a little bit, which in theory should lean it out. It seems like it's too rich. These carbs are too big for this engine. They were just what I could find. I couldn't find a new set. So yeah, we did that, adjusted their mixture screws. We're gonna give it a Hail Mary.
We're gonna give it a shot for science. So yeah. good theory.
Seems a little better on that air mixture adjustment. We're gonna drill out our air correction jets a little more, which should lean it out even a little bit more. And maybe that'll do the trick.
Just a smidge.
Just the next size up. So this is our, what's called an emulsion tube, which I think mixes the air and the fuel. I don't know what I'm talking about. So
there's like 3 pieces there somehow.
Yeah, so this is the fuel jet. This is how much fuel. And then from my understanding, this is how much air. So the bigger we go here, essentially the more air for the same amount of fuel. We could go smaller in fuel jet, but we don't have any jets, which we should have to tune a car with a carburetor, but for some reason, I've just been against buying jets for no reason. So we already drilled this out a little bit, but we're gonna drill these out a little. Well, you really got nothing to lose right now. You know, we're probably gonna have to change these anyway. We're gonna make them a little bit bigger. We can't go a whole lot bigger, but it should at least Band-Aid the problem. Screw it, let's go for it.
That's how you tune your carbs.
Tuning. I can tune my vehicle with a screwdriver and a screwdriver.
And a drill.
But then also a pack of jets. Yeah, it's too much bigger. That's a good bit bigger.
What's that, 2 steps bigger?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, let's do one, let's do one.
Let's see what one looks like. Yeah, I mean, that's noticeable. This is my chamfering drill bit. So I can get that nice factory chamfer.
Precision tuning at its best.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
It's gonna work.
For carb tuning. I mean, as long as, if it gets us in the ballpark, then we know like the carbs are functional. It's just we're torn because these carbs are a little big. Like I said, they're 48s, which are meant for a 3 to 4 liter engine. This is a 1.6 liter engine. A little small for that. But yeah, we could go to 40s, but then I gotta buy new carbs and I already bought this setup, so I'm trying to make it work, but anyway. We're tinkering. We're learning.
We're tinkering and learning.
I'm just gonna have to buy a jet kit. I mean, I think I should brake clean the shavings out of this.
Nah.
The benefit is, if we do buy a jet kit with a bunch of jets, I'm pretty sure it works for all of them. Like a 48, a 40, a 45.
Oh, I see.
It's just like I can buy 2 brand new knockoff 45s for $200 each. They look pretty nice. I feel like they'd be better than crusty used Webers, you know? I keep worrying about the jet doesn't fit in the end of this thing tight. I'm afraid it's gonna fall off when I put it back in there. I mean, they do make this easy on you. I'll give them that.
Once you figure out what everything does, round 2.
I'm gonna be able to retune my car in a 5-minute call after this.
Get them as drill bits.
Give me my drill bits. Poor hands have got saturated in brake cleaner today. I feel like there's probably an episode of House where someone used brake cleaner too much and got it on their hands.
Hands melted
Developed
off.
some neurological disorder.
You might lose your fingerprints, but
I don't know, this shit absorbs in your skin.
gotta put it in its safe spot.
These little cat things are my favorite part. Gotta make sure they match. Alright, take 2.
It's on.
We've adjusted the mixture screws or whatever in as well. I mean, if this makes like another noticeable change, then I'll have confidence that like if I buy a jet kit, we can get it to run right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sucks because I try to get it to idle really low so it chops, but it's like, it's such a fine line between like low enough for it to chop and too low. I feel like that was better. Could be wrong. Made it past $5,000. I mean, we're definitely way ahead of where we were the last time they were on the car. That's for sure.
Yeah, maybe?
But worse on the mid-range. I mean, it's better. It's like I gotta order a jet kit, so we'll get this thing back on the lift and start working on the chassis stuff. It doesn't really matter what set we have on and if we have the engine running correctly at the moment because we've got some chassis issues that pretty much prevent us from driving it. We shouldn't be driving it until we get this stuff fixed. So where we're gonna start is the rear end here. These cars are notorious for the pinion bushing wearing out over time, especially when they're drifted. And ours is very worn out. It has been since I got the car. This has been an issue. This thing whines like it's got a dog box and a quick change in it. So we need to fix that. And we kind of got into the while you're there's, and of course, we're gonna be doing some upgrades. So basically we have everything we need to rebuild the diff. We've got a wear solid style bushing instead of the brass one. We're gonna have to shim this. It's a little more setup work, but it should last longer. New pinion seal, new wheel seals, new wheel bearings, all of that. But we're also going to be upgrading our diff while we're in there. We have this Tomei 1.5-way LSD that I bought. Now, the reason I wanna do this is because this isn't necessarily a dedicated drift car. If it were only a drift car, the welded diff is the way to go. It's the most reliable. But, you know, this is a fun cruise around car, take it to meet, street drive it, rip back roads. We don't have many of those in Florida, but I want this car to be a good all-rounder. With a welded diff, it's kind of annoying to street drive. It doesn't handle that well. I want it to do a little bit of everything. You know, do it all nostalgia car. So we're gonna be switching the welded diff out for a nice proper LSD. Should make this thing a little bit better to drive on the street and still plenty driftable. So that's the plan. Me and Josue are probably gonna talk about cars for another 45 minutes and then we'll get into it. So most of my cars have an independent rear suspension and IRS diff setup. So you would just unbolt the axles at the diff, drop the diff out. But in this scenario, these cars come with a solid axle, a live axle. So to pull the diff out, we've got to pull the axle shafts out, which requires unbolting the brakes, pulling the backing plate off, and then slide hammering them out of the diff. When we didn't notice that there was a little tab that was caught.
Look at that.
Look at that. So we got that sorted out, and then we were able to finish slide hammering that axle out and then move on to the other side. Now, fortunately, it went pretty easy. It really wasn't that bad once we had the right tools, just not a tool that I use very often or need very often because, again, most of my cars have an independent rear suspension diff, and we just unbolt the axles, or they pop out. Sometimes they pop out, but totally different process. So with that done, we move on to unbolting the drive shaft, and then we can get ready to pull the center chunk out. So this rear axle setup, basically the center chunk is the whole diff assembly, the whole diff carrier and everything. So once we take these nuts off, we should be able to pull the whole diff assembly out as one unit and then build it on the bench. So as you can see, very greasy and grimy under here. That's another reason this needs to come apart so we can seal it up a little better and not have such a mess. All right, we got the diff pulled out. You can see this is just open diff welded. The car came with an LSD factory, but the factory VLSDs are nowhere near as good as like an aftermarket clutch type like we're gonna be putting in here. So we gotta strip this thing all the way down so we can at least start replacing the pinion bushing. Sway's working on cleaning up just all the grease. This thing had been leaking for probably decades, a long time. It was very, very, very gross back here. So we're trying to get this cleaned up. Start fresh, that way if we do have any leaks, we'll actually know. They won't just mix in with all the other grime. So anyway, I'm gonna start tearing apart this diff. So the main thing we need to replace is the pinion bushing, which requires taking everything else out. We gotta take the entire carrier out, pull that out of the way, pull the front setup off, and then knock the pinion out so we can get to the bushing. Now that's where the while you're there's come into play. While we're there, while we're tearing this apart anyway, we're gonna go ahead and replace the center section with a clutch type LSD. You know, it's one of those things. You gotta be careful not to get too wound up in the while you're there's, but while you're there, you might as well. All right, well, this is what we are essentially in here to replace. We're replacing the diff itself. We've got our limited slip diff here, clutch type. The rabbit hole is to replace this. So this is a pinion bushing. It crushes to set your gear lash. So you tighten it down, set your gear lash. What we have, we will be shimming it to set our gear lash, and then it can't crush anymore and wear out, whatever. So this is good, but what we realized as we took this apart is that I don't think our noise issue is going to be resolved by fixing that because the gear has some pretty intense wear on it. The ring and the pinion. You probably won't be able to see, maybe, let me try to get you in here close. You can see all these jagged edges on the ring gear. It's got some pretty gnarly wear. The gnarliest wear I've seen of one that wasn't just exploded. I mean, it is really rough, rolled over edges on the ring and the pinion. So it's looking like we're gonna need a gear set. I'm hoping we can get one soon in the ratio we want. This is like a 477, and I think I'd like to keep this ratio for what the car is. It makes it feel really peppy. I'm hoping I can find one soon. Get it here quickly. Obviously, we don't have it in our hands right now. I was not prepared for this. I assumed the ring and pinion were fine, but they're not. They're not fine. They are pretty toast. I mean, it could be that this wore out and then they got toast. It could be that when this was installed, it wasn't shimmed properly. Because there's a lot of things. But I don't want to go putting a nice, expensive new diff in there and put this all back together with new bearings just for it to only last a little while longer. I like to do it right and be done with it and not have to go back in there. So we're gonna have to shelf this for right now, unfortunately. Very unfortunately. So in the meantime, we've got some more chassis stuff to work on. Our wheel bearings. So this front wheel bearing is toast, but we're just gonna go ahead and replace them both. It's another thing that's caused a lot of noise and needs to be fixed. So, but we're gonna get back to work. We're gonna keep making forward progress. So this is another one of those problems that I've known the car has had since the very beginning. It's been something I've wanted to fix since the very beginning, and I've just been dreading it. I hate messing with this kind of stuff. It's just a pain, it's messy, it's annoying, and it's time though. It's time. So when Josue started taking it apart, he realized that the nut was just a little loose, and once we snugged that up, the bearing didn't have play, but I already bought a nice OEM bearing kit. We might as well get these replaced, put a fresh set on, and then we don't have to worry about it. We'll have fresh bearings all the way around the car. This thing will be good to go for another 20 years.
Yeah, it has the little notches. Use that to pop it out. Bow. And get the grease off.
When it comes to bearing setups like this, getting the bearing itself out is not the difficult part. It's getting the bearing races in and out because they are kind of a press fit. So Josue was able to hammer them out with a screwdriver, and then I had to run and get this tool for us to use to hammer the new ones in. So it's a bunch of different sized conical aluminum pieces that allow you to hammer the bearing race in, and then you just put the bearing in after that. So fortunately, all in all, this project is going a little smoother than I expected. I thought this was going to be a nightmare, but overall, not too bad. Just takes a little patience, a little perseverance. So while he's hammering those bearing races in, I'm packing the bearings with grease, the fresh bearings, and then we can go ahead and start throwing everything back on the car and getting it reassembled. But like with all projects, the while you're there's, I thought of a while you're there while we were already there, which is usually a little late, but we're gonna make it work. All right, well, the front situation is most of the way back together. The hard work is done. We could put the cotter pin setup on this, put the cap on, put the caliper on, and call it done and dusted, but we decided to get some extended studs. So I did manage to track down a ring and pinion from Battle Garage. They had a 4.3 in stock, which I was kind of torn anyway on which way to go with that. The 4.7 I feel like would be better for the spirit of driving this car, but the 4.3 is better if I ever want to drive it anywhere at more than 50 miles an hour. So it was what we could get. So might as well try out the 4.3. Maybe I'll like it better. Maybe I won't, and we'll change it back to a 4.7 down the road. I mean, we're not gonna drift this car a whole ton, so peak performance for drifting is not high on the priority list. Good cruisability, but we want it to be fun and peppy. So moral of the story is we got one coming. We got it shipped quick, so we should have it in a couple days, so this thing is not stranded on the lift for an extended period of time. That's the struggle. Is, you know, if I want the 4.7, I gotta wait a few weeks, which means the car's gotta be stranded on the lift for a few weeks, which I'd prefer not to do that. So that being said, we're still torn on the carb situation, and I want you guys to chime in with your input here. So we have the Webers. These are 48s, they're too big. So I think to get these right, we're gonna need to order a bunch of jets, B, new Venturis and new chokes, different sizes. New emulsion tubes. We're gonna have to order a lot of parts to get these right, and they're still not really the right ones. Option B, we buy a new knockoff set, which are supposed to be pretty good, of 45s or 40s, potentially, if I can find a good knockoff set of 40s that are better sized for this. We should, at the starting point, be closer to what this engine's gonna want. Or option 3C, selling that bike carb setup, selling the Weber setup, using that money and buying a set of FCR flat slide carbs. They are super cool. I'll insert an idle clip here. They sound sick. They have like this click at idle. From what I understand, they perform really well. They run really well. They're easier to tune, blah, blah, blah. They're just the cool factor, which is what we're going for with this car. I ordered the parts to build our high-rise spaghetti header, and I think between that and the flat slides, that would be a nice combo, but I don't know, I'm torn. So basically, get the Webers to work, put the other bike carbs back on, sell both, and get flat slide bike carbs. Really, I guess it's between Webers or the flat slides. Let me know. The hard part is we need to find an adapter manifold. Of course, the kit that you can buy doesn't come with the adapter manifold, so we gotta figure that out. It's always a little stuff with this, but let me know what you think. That being said, we're gonna go ahead and end it here, but hopefully we'll get this thing knocked out in the next couple days, and we can actually start enjoying it at least a little bit until we decide what else we wanna change. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, goodbye.